I have talked about doing, and I know that she's very passionate about this. I have known Alison for lots of years, and we won't talk about how many they are, but we go way back, and we've worked together on many different levels, and it's a thrill for me to have her here and offer this presentation to our collaborative. So with that being said, our district attorney, Alison Sosebee.
I am thrilled to death to be here. It feels so good to be able to come in and be able to talk to community organizations that kind of open up a new venue to be able to get this information out. I'll tell you guys, a lot of what I do as district attorney is when we get a case that's referred to us by law enforcement, we have to evaluate that case and make a determination as to how we're going to proceed. So anytime you have a citation, you have a warrant, there's an investigation that's going to involve some criminal act, oftentimes we are involved in the decision-making process and how those cases need to be handled. I am the district attorney in the Appalachian Judicial Circuit, which is 3 counties. It's Fannin, Gilmer, and Pickens, and there's 49 of them in the state of Georgia. And what was very, very important to me in coming into office was to ensure the cases were going to be handled, among other things, uniformly in our circuit. And I will tell you, back probably about 6 months ago, on a Monday night, I realized that I had had a breaking point. When I am sitting there, and it is about, well, it was 9 because I picked up the phone starting about 9:15. When I have a file, and I know I'm going to go to court the next day, and I'm trying to get ready for it, and I realize that if I look at one more naked picture of a 13, 14, or 15-year-old, I'm going to take a high leap off of a short bridge because I just can't take it anymore. And at that point in time, I picked up the phone, and I called the sheriffs in all 3 counties, and I called the judges, including Judge Wooster, who very kindly still answers my telephone calls, and said, I would really like for all of us to sit down and talk. And I want to talk about a couple of different things. I want to make sure, A, this is being handled uniformly across the board where we are concerned, but also I want to do some community outreach. I want to go in, I want to talk to the kids, and I want to talk to the parents so the parents know what is going on. And so we sat down in this meeting, and hugely supported by the court system and law enforcement. The sheriffs, a lot of them brought their school resource officers. And we're roundtabling, we're talking through the problem about what we need to do and how we need to handle this, because it had become a major issue. You sit there and you think about the dangers of social media, cell phones and technology on our teens and tweens, but what I'm looking at, what I'm seeing in the district attorney's office, are all of these kids who are sending sexually explicit messages, inappropriate photographs, and it is not just between one to another. These are being posted on social media. And so we're talking about this, and particularly about the community outreach when we're roundtabling it. And I said, well, you know, I'm willing to go into the high schools. I'm willing to go in and talk to the students and explain to them what's going on. And the school resource officers looked at me like I had 3 heads and said, Alison, the problem's at the high school, but the middle school's the breeding ground for it. That's where you need to go. And I have to tell you, so a lot of you might have seen me walk in. I have 2 boys. They're 6 and 9. My 6-year-old is in that room back there. I brought him a set of earphones so he couldn't hear my speech. My 9-year-old started 5th grade last week, so he is a year away from middle school, and I will tell you as a parent, it makes me cringe to think that my child is going into that environment. And I think that the kids don't understand the repercussions of what they're doing, but one of the things that I have noticed going out and talking to parents and trying to build support for this program is you'll sit there and you'll talk to a lot of parents and they'll go, that is terrible, and you see the banner running through their mind, but my kid would never do that. And I want to say, yes, they would, because I've seen the photos. So, you know, I will tell you the presentation coming out of this, and there's 2 parts to it. I have gone into the schools, and I will say Dr. Lemieux has been absolutely spectacular in supporting me and coming in and being able to talk at the high school. And when all of this was starting and moving forward, I went and I have talked to the school boards in 3 counties. And at this point, the school boards have approved this presentation, the student version of this presentation, to be presented from 5 through 12 for this upcoming school year, which is absolutely wonderful, except, of course, I vary it depending on the age group we're talking about. But what's important to me, too, in the version that I have here, is the parent version. Because I want parents to understand, A, what the problem is, but B, how they can be proactive to the situation as opposed to reactive to the situation, because it's really hard to unring a bell once that's happened. So I started thinking about, why is all of this happening now? I mean, what is different that actually exists that we weren't dealing with this before? And I started thinking about it, and I thought, you know, the modes of communication that we have now are completely different. I mean, if you look back in caveman time, the only thing that you could have, and the joke being, this is an early Facebook post, that you might get communication between a very limited group of people. And then I started thinking about, when did I get my first cell phone? This is a picture of my first cell phone, by the way. I know y'all are insanely jealous. I thought I was the biggest, baddest thing going. It came in a bag. I could talk on it in the car. I was not standing in my children. I bought this little antique phone to hang in my kitchen. And I say antique phone, it's one of those rotary phones, which is what I grew up with. So when I went from having to stand on a corded line in the kitchen trying to have a conversation with my mother standing there cooking dinner to this, I thought I was awesome. And when I found a photograph of this, I realized it was at vintagegear.com, which did not do a whole lot for my ego. I'll tell you guys that. But it dawned on me, this is what is different that we're dealing with now. We did not deal with these types of issues, this connectedness with social media for access to the entire world, literally, on the internet. We had who was in our community. We had our friends. We had who we would feel comfortable standing on the corded line in the kitchen talking to in front of our moms and our dads. We didn't have these little tiny boxes of dynamite that connected us to the entire world at the push of a single button. And so the premise for the presentations to the students is that the dangers of social media, weapons of mass destruction, the weapons of mass destruction are the cell phones or the tablets or the computers that the kids have. I mean, I jokingly told my kids, and I hope he has his earphones in, my 9-year-old keeps saying, when are you going to get me a cell phone? When are you going to get me a cell phone? And I said, when you're about 32. And he gets in the car the other day and he goes, I started thinking about the cell phone. And I thought, oh, here it comes. And I said, really, what were you thinking? And he goes, I think 24 would be better. We compromised on 25 because I just wasn't willing to give in. But the problem that we have in reality as parents, as educators, as community organizations is combating this problem, and it's completely new in the generation that we're having to deal with. So it's very easy for kids to create, share, and post personal photos and videos of themselves, and in reality, this is usually not a big deal, unless they start sharing information that is too personal. But how do you explain to the children what parameters do you put into place, because that is what they are? How do you put those parameters in place saying this is appropriate and this is not appropriate? So, going back, sexting is a very, very broad term. And it's the sending or receiving of sexually suggestive or explicit text or messages via electronic means. Okay? I mean, that sounds very, very clinical, but it needs to be explained in terms of the ramifications. So what is it? It's taking nude photographs of yourself. It's posting nude photographs of others. It's sending those explicit messages. And it's so much more. I mean, it is not just simply taking one nude photograph. It is videos. It is the sending of the messages. It is the statements. It's the promises that are being made. There are situations that we have had to deal with here locally where you will have children who are in middle school that have taken explicit videos of themselves. They have transmitted them, and they have not only made the rounds through the entire middle schools, but they have gone into the high schools. That's a bell you cannot unring for the video that's being distributed, because everybody will forever remember what occurred, and then you run the risk of it being published onto the internet. So how far does the message travel? This is one of the things that I try to explain to the kids when I talk. There's not a stop button, there's not a delete, it's not a car that runs out of gas. You know, you're in middle school, you find your significant other that you know you're going to love forever and ever and ever, and you're in this committed relationship, and so therefore you send them a picture. But what happens next? Where does it go after you send it to that significant other? It doesn't matter how it's sent, because all of these are the apps that are available, and it doesn't stop. You know, I'll tell you, I have gotten an entire education on social media and the apps that are available out there, and it's not just Facebook and it's not Instagram, but there's Kik, there's Yik Yak, there's Vine. There are hundreds of them out there. And being proactive as a parent or as a guardian is what is so incredibly important, to monitor what your kids actually have access to and what is the purpose behind it. So a digital footprint, it's very, very unique to you. It's like your fingerprint. But your digital footprint is a trail that is left by you using the internet or other digital devices like a mobile phone. And it provides data on what you've done in your digital environment. It is your online ID. You didn't realize every single time you Google something, it goes to an IP address or it goes back to your phone. It's all traceable. That when you post pictures on Facebook or Instagram, the information you're putting out there about yourself, but more importantly, what information are the kids putting out there about themselves? They're identifying information, even if it is not sexually explicit. How are they being identified by the people who want to hurt them? I tell my kids all the time, I mean, I love them. I love being from here. I'm born, raised, educated here. I am thrilled to death to raise my family here. But we're not just limited to the people in our community in this connected age. We're dealing with the entire world, and there are just bad people out there that want to hurt us. So what information are we giving them? And I tell the kids, the easiest way in the world to find out what part of your digital footprint is, or your electronic fingerprint, Google yourself. You would be shocked about what can come up about you in a simple name search on Google. So what's the impact of modern technology on our minors today? The statistics I started reading when I put this presentation together were absolutely shocking to me. 1 in 5 teens have sent or posted nude or semi-nude photos or videos of themselves. 1 in 5. 20%. You think, you go to the high school, you take 20% of the student population and they have sent or posted nude photos of themselves. 21% of girls, 39% of boys sent these in hopes of dating or hooking up. And let's think about this one. 51% of girls say that they've had pressure to do it. You take half of the female population in the high school or the middle school, 51%, and 33% of boys, a third, say that they have seen nude photos or semi-nude originally meant for somebody else. So this girl sends a photograph to her significant other, her boyfriend, when they're in the 8th grade, because they love and care for each other, and you know they're going to be together forever and ever and ever. And what does he do? He distributes it. One of the things I tell the kids when we start this presentation is I say, I want you to imagine your most prized possession that you possibly have. That you think that your life is going to come to a screeching halt if you can't have it. So they all laugh and they come up with something in their head, and I say, now I want you to put it in a box. Now think of your best friend. Who is the person that you would trust the most with your prized possession? Who would that be? And now I want you to give your most prized possession in that box to your friend to keep forever. No matter what your most prized possession is, it will never be more important than your dignity. And when you send those messages, when you send those photographs, what you are doing is you are handing someone else your dignity. And what's going to happen when they get mad at you? That they get upset that you didn't sit with them at the lunchroom table, that you didn't walk with them down the hallway, that you wanted to date a girl or a boy that they wanted to date. Well, they're going to do to your dignity exactly what they would do to your most prized possession, and they're going to destroy it. 33%, 1/3 admit they have seen photographs meant for someone else. So, what teens are doing electronically seems to have an effect on what they are doing in real life. 22% of males admit that it makes them more forward and aggressive. 38% saying exchanging that sexy content makes dating or hooking up more likely. And 29% say exchanging sexy content is expected. Almost 1/3 of teens believe that that is expected to date. So one of the things that I tell the kids is think before you post these pictures or other personal information, because every single post is an electronic fingerprint that can damage your college careers, future employment opportunities, and your reputations with your friends, your family, and your neighbors. So the case I told you I was preparing on, that I had the breaking moment, this was a case where a girl had sent nude photographs to her boyfriend, who had then distributed them to, being the kind Southern gentleman that he is, only 5 of his closest friends and not the entire school. We had received the phone because inevitably someone is going to get mad, someone is going to slip up, we're going to get a phone, and then when we receive one phone, by the time we do the dumps and the analysis on it, it's going to lead to 5 more on every single phone. So it grows exponentially at every single step. And so we had gotten this phone and we had started prosecution on this case, and we had gone to court at least 3 or 4 times before this point. Every single time we went to court, she's crying and she's boo-booing. And it's not that I was not sympathetic to her. I mean, I was very sympathetic to the situation. These were very graphic photographs and videos. And finally, one day we're sitting there and she's crying, and I looked at her and I said, no offense. I mean, why are you still crying here again today? And she looks at me and she says, you don't understand. My daddy won't even look me in the eye. You know the kids aren't thinking that when they send the sexy photographs for the hookup or the date. They're not thinking about having to go into church or into school knowing that everyone has seen that information or those photographs. It creates an electronic fingerprint. You know when you Google if you are offering someone a job, if you are going to employ them. You know you Google. I Google. I want to see what your Facebook posts look like. I want to know if you've got Instagram. I want to know what's there. But these kids, at this point, holding these sticks of dynamite in their hand, do not understand that they are creating their online identity. So, one of the things that I tell kids is that there are 4 rules. And if you follow 4 rules, you won't see me. Number 1, actually this would be true for all of you too. Number 1, do not speed when you drive a car. Number 2, do not tailgate. Number 3, do not text and drive. And number 4, don't be stupid. And I explain to the kids everything that I have said preceding this moment in time falls under don't be stupid. So the guidestone being, if you have to sneak to do it, lie to cover it up, delete it to avoid it being seen, and you probably shouldn't be doing it to begin with. So where's all of this happening? I said I got an education when I started researching this and going through where all of the apps were and what the kids were using. There was stuff out there I never in a million years would have thought of. And I'll tell you, one of the things that concerned me was the Xbox symbol up there. My kids have an Xbox. I had put every control that I could possibly put in terms of internet security on my kids' electronics. And I have given them the speech, but I will tell you, my kids play online with their friends like Minecraft, and I have the rule that they have to have the volume so I can hear it, so I can hear any conversations that are going on. But the other rule is that I have to know who the kid is, and I have to know their parents. Otherwise, you are not going to be friends with them online. So I'm walking through the living room one day, and I hear this little conversation coming through the TV. And my 9-year-old is sitting there and he's playing, and I hear, "Hi, my name is Nick. I live in Michigan. What's your name?" But for, I think, the fact that my 9-year-old felt my eyes boring into the back of his skull, he would have said, "My name's Nathaniel and I live in da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da." He turns around, he looks at me, realizes what is occurring, and immediately disconnects the game. And I have tried to be proactive, but it is about being vigilant as well. So a lot of these are the popular apps with teens and tweens. And I will tell you, if anybody wants a printed version of this presentation, I can certainly provide it to you later. Down is another one. And basically, this is a sexual hookup. I mean, it's where you go to find somebody to be with. And it has no age restriction in terms of service. Fess is another one, so you can confess all of your most private moments anonymously online because, you know, there's not an IP address that directly relates it back to where you're sending it from. Instagram is another one. And I will tell you, Instagram has recently been linked to the buying and selling of drugs. You don't think Instagram in that manner, but you look at the security settings and who's seeing these posts on your kids' accounts. You might be connected, but you also might not be seeing every post they're making. Kik is another one. Snapchat. I hate Snapchat. I will tell you why I hate Snapchat. Snapchat to me sells everyone who has ever used this app a false bill of goods. They go in and they say, you can send this picture, you can send this message, and it will disappear into the ethersphere in 10 seconds. That is not true, and we'll talk a little bit about data retention, but I will go ahead and tell you that Snapchat's security on their servers were so bad and they got hacked so many times. They ended up getting sued and had to pay out a settlement because the information that was being stored on their servers, because by the way, it does not disappear into the ethersphere in 10 seconds because every single one of these apps have data retention on their servers, usually up to 18 months. But all these things the kids thought that were sending and everyone else was still there. So Yik Yak is another one. So what does your child's future hold? And this goes to, are they going to go to college? Are they going to get a job? It's part of the long-term ramifications of what we're looking at. You know, if you're in a competitive situation for an employment or an educational opportunity, these types of issues are going to crop up in their future. And I know good and well when I was growing up that I thought, if the situation was bad enough, my parents could fix anything. There is not a fix-it button for it. And I wish that was true. I mean, there's so many things I wish that you could go back, redo, undo, but they can't. And they're so young, they don't understand what they are playing with. But talking about the extreme case, and this was in 2009, and by the way, we've had circumstances that have happened along these lines locally. This particular individual was pretending to be a girl on Facebook, and he was sending out messages to all of these young boys in 15 to 17, and so they would exchange these photographs together, and so the boys were sending the nude photographs to him and thinking that it was a girl. And so the way that this had came about and had actually came to light is one of the boys had agreed that he was going to meet her, that he was going to take her out on a date. And the problem was he wasn't even 16 years old and he didn't have a car, and his mom had caught on to the situation. And when it came to light, he was not going to go meet that really hot 18-year-old girl that he thought that he was going to meet. He was going to go meet a 31-year-old male sex offender. You don't know who you are talking to on the other side of that screen. It is impossible to know, and that is why it is so concerning about being vigilant. In this case, because he had the nude photographs of these boys, he coerced at least 7 of them into sexual acts because he was holding their dignity in his hand and they didn't want to be outed in their school. So bullying's been around forever, right? I mean, we've all, since the beginning of time. Somebody's got a power leverage on somebody else, they want to use it, and they want to make somebody else's life a misery. I mean, that's really and truly what it comes down to. It's not anything new. But what our kids are having to deal with now is cyberbullying, where you can do it anonymously from the other side of a screen. You don't even have to be there at the time that it's going on. You're posting on the internet. You're sending text messages because you want to teach someone a lesson. You want to put others down. You want to share their personal information. And not allowing our children to be put in a position where they can be victimized is very important. In going through this presentation and doing the research, I came across the story of Hope Witzel. Hope Witzel was a 13-year-old girl, did well in school, came from a good family, found this boy she really, really, really liked. She really, really wanted him to like her. So basically he says to her, well, if you send me some new photographs of yourself, I might like you more. She says, okay. She sends it to him. He sends it out to about half the school. It makes the rounds through the entire school. It actually hits other schools. Everybody in the school knows what she's done. She starts walking down the hallway and starts getting tortured relentlessly, called every name in the book. Her life was a misery. This happened in the spring portion of one school year. Goes into summer. She thinks, you know, she survived it. Goes through fall, new school year, brand new start. It's going to be great. She goes back to school and it is worse than it was when she left. Her parents had no idea what was going on because she didn't tell them until almost to the end. Hope's mom goes into her bedroom one night to check on her. Thinks Hope might be asleep. She's laying at the edge of her bed and her head's at an odd angle. And she realizes that Hope has hung and killed herself because she can't take what has happened to her. So I can play you the story of Hope. In terms of the news report, it talks about her mother and what she went through, and it talks about what her friends, what Hope's friends saw happen to Hope. How am I going to get this to publish? I don't know if I need to send it. Normally I just click over and minimize that.
Well, I don't know. I think it is just turned on.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, it's working.
Remember
I'll
Okay.
I will tell you, it does not look as if we're going to be able to get the Story of Hope whistle to play. On the printed version that I can provide to you, I've got the website, I've got the link at the bottom. I would encourage you to go look at it. It frankly is a very heart-wrenching story. When you see middle school girls that are describing their friend walking down the hallway being called slut and whore because she really, really, really liked a boy, made a terrible decision in sending him photographs, and he, being frankly what I consider not to be a very good person, disseminated them. So one of the things I talk to the kids about is the resources that we have through law enforcement. How is it that we're going to know what you're doing? We have what's called a cell phone dump, and it is not that kind of cell phone dump. It is this kind of cell phone dump. So we can take your cell phone, your tablet, your laptop, we can plug it into our software, and we can create an exact mirror image of your hard drive. So we get every bit of visible material that you have on your electronic. And not only do we get every bit of visible material on the electronic, we get every bit of deleted material on the electronic, assuming it hasn't been overwritten by other data. So let's think about this. You would have to completely fill up your entire hard drive and then start overwriting the existing data there for us not to retrieve that information. That's a lot of information that we can be able to access. It's not just what mom and dad see. It's not, you get to see the hidden apps. You get to see the deleted material. I had this little girl one time when I was giving a school speech back a couple of years ago, and we're talking about this process. She raises her hand and she goes, I have a passcode lock on my phone so you can't get in it. To which I explained to her that that might keep her parents out. It would not keep me out. But the information that we can access is tremendous. But not only through that, there's this wonderful policy called data retention. And that means that all of these apps, Vine, Twitter, Yik Yak, Snapchat, will store the information on their servers usually for up to 18 months. Now, the Snapchat one is the one that got me because I actually went on to find what their data retention policy was. And I will tell you, what I read on their own website just absolutely amazed me. And it says it's not impossible to circumvent the Snapchat app and access the files directly, adding that users should keep in mind data retention before putting any state secrets in your selfies. That would be a big clue as to what I would consider. And when you look at their other privacy policy, in addition, as for any other digital information, there's ways to access snaps while in temporary storage on the recipient's devices or forensically, i.e. the cell phone dump, even after being deleted. But what the kids don't realize is when you take that picture, you create a digital imprint on the phone that takes it or the device that took it. When you send it to the other person and they receive it, it also creates a digital imprint. And I'm not even talking about doing a screenshot to save it. So what concerns me is the perception of the kids who think if they hit delete that it goes away. And they're all the same. Retention of cell phone providers. Text message detail, depending on what company that you use, up to 1 year for Verizon. Call record details, 1 year. I don't need your phone to get that information. I send a nice little letter to the cell phone companies and say, hi, my name's Alison Sosebee. I'm the district attorney in the Appalachian Judicial Circuit. I want the information on this account. And then I send them a subpoena or a search warrant. They don't realize all of that information is accessible. So if you're a tech person, you probably saw this coming, that nothing is ever truly deleted, and anyone who tells you otherwise is 100% wrong. So we've talked about tools for law enforcement, but what about tools for parents? Biggest thing that I can preach is being proactive as opposed to reactive, and communicating with your teen about the risk of sharing these pictures and making them aware of the criminal consequences. And then I love this one, using anti-spyware. So when I first started giving this speech back several months ago, I was sitting in bed one night and I was flipping through my PowerPoint. My 9-year-old loves the police, loves the military, had told me after I had taken this job, "Mom, I am so glad you won the election." I said, "Me too, baby." And I had done criminal defense work before. I had never considered his perception of what my job was. And he looks at me and says, "But now you get to work for the good guys," which is pretty awesome, right? But I'm sitting here, and when he sees the clip of the handcuffs on one of the prior slides, it catches his attention, and he goes, "What are you doing?" And, you know, for the longest time, I never had to worry about, you know, what was on my phone or, you know, what was up, because he didn't know how to read. And now that he's learned, you know, I'm angling so he wouldn't be seeing anything inappropriate. And I think, you know what? I am going and I'm talking to all of these other kids at all of these other schools, and I've got my own kid that is sitting right beside me asking a question. And I take the opportunity to have a conversation with him. And I explain to him what I just explained to you about cell phone dumps and all of those other things. And he gets tears in his eyes. And I think to myself, this cannot be happening here in my house. And he said, "Do you remember when you downloaded that game for me back a few weeks ago?" And I remembered, and I was in a hurry because I have their security settings set at basically Dora the Explorer level. And I said, "Yeah," and I knew I was in a hurry, and I didn't go back and I didn't change his security settings back immediately. I did later when I thought of it. And he goes, "Well, I just want to let you know I did something I shouldn't be doing. I don't want to go to jail." And I thought, oh no. And he proceeds to tell me that he had played a military game that I had told him that he couldn't play. But I'll have to tell you, in the scheme of the military game and not the other stuff where my mind was at. And I thought, how quickly it happens. I mean, it can, just like that. So, I guess one of the biggest things, and it's very easy to say with me standing here and it not being my child, but teach, don't preach. And using recent news stories to explain the ramifications of that. And encouraging your teen to understand at home what the ramifications are going to be to their future. Now, parental control apps, and I will tell you, I'm not endorsing any of these. I Googled, I went online, found out who had the highest rankings. These were very, very highly regarded. Through these parental control apps, and I will just say it very briefly, you've got the ability to install this on your kid's phone. And depending on what it is that you choose, you can install it remotely. They'll never know it's there. It'll be a hidden app in the background. You can take control of their camera and take photographs of it. You can do geolocation. You can read real time what is on their phone. You can access what is visible on their phone. You can access the deleted material. It gives parents the ability to do mini cell phone dumps, essentially, within their home to see what your kids are doing. And I'm going to tell you something right now. I love my children with all my heart. And they can have all the friends in the world they want to have. I am not their friend. I am their parents. So I don't believe that they have a right to privacy when it comes to their electronics. I'm going to search it because I want them to be safe and not stupid. This was another one, and it's actually ranked really, really high, Heister Mobile, and it allows you to track call information and obtain information, and I believe this is one of the ones that you can install remotely. But we also had My Mobile Watchdog, and if you look, it's $4.95 a month. This is not cost prohibitive stuff. It's going to cost thousands of dollars for you to be able to do. Now I will tell you, I have talked to the sheriff's departments, and I am giving them a list of recommended apps, and I say recommended apps, things that I have found that have been very appropriate, and the sheriffs have been willing to dedicate someone within the sheriff's department to help if there are parents or guardians out there who don't feel comfortable with that level of technology. They want to be proactive, but they don't necessarily feel comfortable in doing it themselves. So kind of like a local tech support team from your local sheriff's department. Mama Bear is another one. The biggest thing is being active and not passive. So the law. And I'll tell y'all, there's 3 major statutes that this falls under. One is sexual exploitation of children. When I came in and I said in that meeting that I want to make sure this is being handled uniformly, understanding that depending on the age of the recipient, depending on the age of the sender, depending on the person who is possessing it or distributing it, you get a photo from your girlfriend, you pass it on to your best friend, that is distribution. You keep it on your phone, that is possession. These are offenses, sexual offenses that can be registered sex offenses on a felony level. Think about hanging that albatross around these kids' necks because they're being teenagers that have access to cell phones and internet. And it is scary, and I will tell you, as a parent and as a district attorney, I don't have any desire to hang an albatross like that around someone's neck. But at the same time, you can't say it's okay for them to be doing this. So, sexually explicit image of himself or herself is guilty of a misdemeanor if the teen is at least 14, the person in possession is not 17. So you think about the people who are in middle school, you think about the people who are in high school, they don't always fall within those age ranges. You have an 18-year-old that is in possession of a 14-year-old photograph or a 13-year-old, felony offense. Electronically furnishing obscene materials to minors. Once again, we are in the 14-year-old range, but this is under the age of 18, being 17. And otherwise, this would be a high and aggravated misdemeanor. But computer or electronic pornography. No older than 18, depicted teen is 14 or older. You had to have permission. If you disseminated it without permission, if you are holding that dignity in a box for someone and you are mad at them and you disseminate them, that is a felony. Exceptions. I tell the kids, you know, you think you're going to be, I like to win. I'm just going to be honest with you. When I go into a courtroom, I don't go in there to lose. So when they come in, I say, you think you're going to come in and going to be the best defense attorney on the face of the planet. You're going to beat me. Your defense is going to be that I took the pictures from my girlfriend or my boyfriend. I thought my friends would think it's funny. Everybody forwards these pictures. No. None of those are legally permissible defenses to any of the statutes that I just laid forth that could make you a registered sex offender. So the penalty that someone receives for committing one of those crimes depends on whether or not they're considered an adult or a juvenile, what age range they fall in. Juvenile teens could face going to YDC, probation, fines, community service. They're not thinking of that when they're sending the sexy photograph. But if you're an adult, depending on the crime involved, under those statutes, you could be no less than 5 to 20 years in prison. It's not worth it. The ramifications are huge. Up to a $100,000 fine. Other consequences. Getting sued civilly. So I went and I was looking and I found in October of 2014, the Georgia Court of Appeals actually rendered somewhat of a landmark decision in terms of online cyberbullying. And the case involved this child who was posting photographs of another child on an online account. The parents of the perpetrator had been made aware of it. They had not done anything to stop it. And it was pretty bad. It was. So the parents and the victim sued the child who was posting it and the child's parents. Child's parents said, no, you can't do that to us. Filed a motion for summary judgment. Says we need to be dismissed out of the case. We didn't do anything wrong. My kid was doing that. It wasn't me doing that. You know what the Court of Appeals said? We're going to let a jury decide this, because if the parents knew about it and they didn't stop it and they impliedly condoned the behavior, you know what? we think they might need to be held liable. And I tell the kids, that is your house flying away by engaging in this activity. One of the things that's important to understand, and I explain to them, that you have a person who takes the photograph, you have the person who receives it, and then they disseminate it out to 1, 5, 10 of their friends. The person who disseminates it, should they get in trouble? By all means. The person who took the photograph and sends it will be punished as well, because they have violated those statutes. They created the situation. It is not just one person that is going to receive the punishment, it is across the board. So don't complain about the drama your actions have created. You have to eat it, you have to deal with it, do better, and move on. And choose carefully, because the choices that you make today determine what you have and what you will be tomorrow. So we've talked to law enforcement. They are involved if there is an inappropriate photograph that is being disseminated, that has been transmitted. We're from the government and we're here to help. We are here to help. But understand that there are consequences and ramifications, that if your child took the photograph and sent it and someone else disseminated it, it doesn't mean that your child won't have some consequences that go with it, because they created the situation that has started it. And then, of course, this is my contact information. You guys are spectacular. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Thank you, Alison. This was wonderful. And if you don't mind, with your permission,